I would like to call to order this special study session of the Yuma Union High School District Number 70 Governing Board. If you would all please stand with us and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Lara, would you like to lead us, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so we're here for a study session about absenteeism. Mr. Brienza, please take it away.
All right, thank you. I want to thank everyone for being here early for our study session. I want to thank our participants as well. Before we get started, I'm just going to do a quick round of introductions of the people that are joining us for conversations, because they may jump in at any time, or you may have questions for them as we talk. So we'll start. We have Brett Pavey, Principal of Cibola High School, David King, Principal of Vista. We have Amber Pacewick. She's a Director of Student Supports at COFA. Lauren Simpson, also a Director of Student Supports at Cibola. We have Rigo Conde. He's a Dropout Prevention Specialist at San Luis. And then we have Chris Reese, Dropout Prevention Specialist at Somerton. So I just want to thank them for their time, and they're going to be speaking to their role throughout the day and week of how they handle students and absenteeism. So just know that they'll be introduced a little bit later and be participating, but if questions come up, I want you guys to feel free to jump in and add your comments as well if it suits. So thank you. This study session was requested by board member Craddock a couple months ago, I think it was. So shortly after that, I sent information to all our governing board members to take a look at a Helios Foundation presentation on absenteeism across the state of Arizona, so it's very, very timely. I'm not sure how many of you were able to attend the webinar, but I do know Ms. Craddock did, because we were texting during it. And at the same time, the numbers are very similar to what we have here in Yuma County, what people are experiencing across the state. So it's very timely. If we could just go forward one, I don't know who has the clicker. Oh, apologize. I just want to review what our district looks like, just a real quick snapshot. Obviously, we have our 7 schools. We are a huge district, 2,400 square miles. So our students, our families travel a lot just to get to school throughout the day. Enrollment's just under 11,000. We're very proud of our grad rate, 92%. Every one of our schools is a B school, which is amazing. Dropout rate, which we have 2 of those experts at the table today. Last year was 1.42. They're very competitive, I can tell you that right now. But I always want them to drive for 0. Always. Minority students, 90%. We have the largest migrant high school population in the state. And those are migrant students who come from California, potentially Colorado. They follow the crops, so about 18% of our students are that. We're very proud of our dual enrollment numbers, and they continue to climb, and you'll see more data about that a little bit later this year, I would imagine. But about 9% of our students are enrolled in dual enrollment courses with our proud partner of Arizona Western College. Large number of staff, 547. I was just down in Human Resources a couple days ago. They have a whiteboard. They keep track of how many employees we have. We have 1,112 employees. So, basically almost half between certified and classified, which is able to make us have a safe learning environment for every student. And one thing we're proud of is our retention rate. So as we talk about absenteeism and students forming relationships with teachers, it's great when we have such a high retention rate that teachers are coming back year after year, because the bonds that are formed with those students and teachers really helps drive kids to school, I think we're going to find out. But that's enough from me, okay? I don't plan on talking a whole lot today, and I see some smiles, so I took note of that. Diane, so right now I'm going to turn it over to our Associate Superintendent, Rob Jankowski.
All right, so if you can click to the next one, we're going to start off with an activity. So you guys are going to get a chance to collaborate with the individuals in front of you. So I guess step 1 is to go ahead and sit at a table, no more than 2 board members per table. Just 2 chairs, yep. So no more than two board members per table, so you can sit with our principals. You can bring a pen. There's markers there too. You can sit with the principals, you can sit with the DOSs, or you can sit with the dropout prevention. All right, so step 2 is, here is the prompt. In front of you, you have what's called a consensus board. And what that means is by the end, you're going to come up with a consensus as to what the prompt is. And so our prompt is, what brings kids to school? Why are students coming to school? Some good examples, if you remember last semester, we had that big social media scare, but we still had San Luis. San Luis stayed open, and we still had kids that came to school and wanted to come to school. So what are reasons why kids are coming to school? We have probably around a 90% attendance rate. So what is causing those kids to come? So you have some sticky notes. Go ahead and start writing down some things that you think bring kids to school, and then you have a square in front of you. There should be 4 squares. Place your sticky notes in one of the squares, and the other 4 members will place their sticky notes in one square. So I'll give you about 1 to 2 minutes to work individually. Once you finish a sticky note, put it on there, and then we'll go on to the next directions. You can put as many as you want. Again, you're just thinking what all types of reasons brings kids to school. You can think about, when you were in school. You can think about, when your kids were in school. So what draws kids to campuses, to schools? Think about our different populations. We just went over, our minority population, our migrant population. About 30 more seconds here. 30 more seconds. All right, kind of finish up writing here. So next step is you're going to have to choose somebody in your group to be a scribe. That person will have to write down, there's a center box, and as a group, you're going to share out, one at a time, what you put. Just share one item, and then the next person can share one item, and you're just going to keep going around and around until all the items have been shared. That way each person gets an equal amount of talk time as well. So you're going to share out, and if other people agree that that is a reason why kids come to school, the scribe will write that down in the middle of your large white sheet. And we'll give you about 2 minutes to work on that. So again, you're collaborating in your group. One person goes, then the next person goes around in a circle. So you can just place your sticky note in the middle. I guess you don't need a scribe. You just need somebody to place your sticky notes in the middle. If more than one person has that item, you can just put the sticky notes on top of each other. About 30 more seconds. 30 more seconds. You're going to put it as many as you agree on. Some groups are still working. We'll probably push it to another 30 seconds to a minute. If some of you are finishing up, your next step is to choose a spokesperson. So you're going to choose a spokesperson. Each person has a microphone, and we're going to be sharing out. So in your group, if you are done with your consensus, choose a spokesperson ready to share out. So here's what we're going to do. We got 3 groups. We're going to start off with, I guess, the principals, Mr. Brienza and Mr. Lara right here in front of us. They're going to share one of their consensus. And if they have that consensus, the other groups can put a check next to it to show that, yes, they have that too. And then they're going to just go down the line and they're going to share something new. And we're going to keep going through each group until all the consensus items have been shared out. So you can give a quick share out, maybe why you chose that. But again, try and keep it short. But again, this is part of like the positive approach to why are kids coming to school. So I'll start over here. It looks like Mr. King, you're going to be the spokesperson for this group.
We said friends. We also had sports or athletics.
Just one. Oh, just one, and then we'll go to the next one. You can say why you chose friends.
We said friends because we felt that brings a lot of students to form those great personal relationships.
Next group.
We said food, or to have the ability to eat, because we have a district that does have higher poverty levels than some of the other ones, and students may not always have access to food at home.
All right. Group on the end.
Sports and activities.
Well, back over here to you guys. Do you guys have anything new?
We had classes or CTE.
We said to prepare for their future.
Okay. What's that?
Teachers.
Teachers.
We don't have any unsaid
Okay.
consensus.
The middle group, do you guys have some new ones?
We do. We have for the feeling of safety.
Safety and security. That's good. What about the group in the end?
Parents. Support.
Back to the middle group. Anything new? No?
No.
The last group, do you guys have anything new that hasn't been said yet?
We have self-drive, arts.
Arts?
The law.
Definitely.
Doing something that's less boring than staying home.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, this is just a quick activity to show you, kind of start brainstorming what brings some things or what brings students to our schools. A lot of great examples that, some of the reasons why that's happening. So thank your group member for collaborating, and we're going to go back to our seats. And then I'm going to turn it over to our Chief Communications, Mr. Patton.
Thank you, Mr. Jankowski. Well, the activity that you guys just did actually has some real data associated with it. The last 2 years, we've administered a climate and culture survey to 3 different stakeholder groups in our district: our staff members, our parents, and our students. To really get to the bottom of what brings students to school, we're sharing the data that was given to us in their responses from students. And just a quick aside about surveys, there is a state statute, ARS 15-177, that states that we must share with our families the questions in advance of students being administered surveys. So that's something that we've taken pride in doing. A week before the survey is administered to students, we send that out through our Parent Square messaging platform. It's a quick yes or no. Once they get a chance to review the questions, parents are allowed to say yes or no they consent to their student taking the survey. Any student that's a no is removed from the messaging group, and then the survey is sent to the students who were either yes or had no parent respond, because in most cases the survey is allowed to be administered via passive consent, which means they didn't say yes or no. So let's get to the interesting stuff. The results have had a response rate of at least 4,100 students each of the last 2 years. So based on that 10,800 number that we saw earlier, we're talking about roughly 40% of our students have responded, and anybody who's administered a survey before, that's an amazing response rate. This year we had over 5,000 students take the survey. So these are a good sample size from our district across all of our campuses. One other aside is in 2024, the option of friends was not included in the survey. So something tells me that probably would have been number one for 2024 as well. But looking at the bottom, those are the numbers from last school year, 2024, again, administered in February. Graduation was the number one response across all of the schools in the aggregate. CTE at 37%, athletics 30%, academics 29%, and clubs and activities 22%. In 2025, we see a lot of the same ones, except for the addition of friends, which almost over 3/4 of our students said that's the reason they come to school. Graduation, pretty similar. CTE jumped about 6%. Athletics, again, pretty similar. The interesting thing was that clubs and activities actually finished 6th. Teachers, which I think all of us can agree was a really positive sign to see, and we don't know, that could have something to do with the continuity of our retention rate and things like that, but 23% of students responded saying that teachers were the reason they came to school. Something that's not up there and that the table in the middle mentioned was meals. Over 14%, almost 15% of the students that responded to this survey said that they're coming to school for meals. And I think if we expanded that out, it could be even more than that if we got responses from everybody. But like I said, it's a pretty good sample size, and just knowing that that's an important reason for students to come to school is I think, something else that we should always keep in the back of our mind when it comes to just why students are there. It's a whole gamut of reasons, from friends to things that really involve their health and well-being. So do you guys have any questions about this data, about the way we process our surveys or anything like that? Okay, well, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bosch, who's going to share some data more about absenteeism.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah,
How
absolutely.
many categories did you say there were?
I think there were 11
11.
total, and they have the option to pick as many as they want.
Okay.
So it's not limited to a certain number of responses. I think the most we saw any student respond to was 5 or 6,
Okay.
and there was very few. Most of the time they picked 3 or 4 at the most, and then sorted them out and did the math from there. But I think if I remember correctly, 10 at the least, maybe 11 options if we count friends this year and not last year.
Nice.
Alright. I'm just curious to find out how many males, how many females. You have data on that?
So we didn't ask for gender when we took it. We just asked for the school that they attended. So we do have data that's broken down by school. We didn't ask for that. In 2025, if we really wanted to find that out, we might be able to because of the way we did it. We did the 2025 survey on Parent Square, so there is a student ID associated with it, whereas in 2024, it was truly completely anonymous on Google Forms. So this year's version, the data about who took what was not shared with anyone, but I would have access to find it if we really wanted to know that. But in reality, the thing that we were asking in the survey was what school they attended and what grade they were in and how long they had been in Yuma Union High School District. So not just if they were a freshman, but if they were, a junior, maybe they'd only been here for 1 year, and stuff like that. So, Ms. Kravitz. Or Craddock, sorry. So in theory, the 2025 version was not anonymous in the way that 2024 was. But one of the things that when I asked that question, answered was that the information about who answered would not be shared publicly or with, say, principals or teachers or anything like that. It's relegated just to sort of the administrators at the back end of Parent Square.
I have another question.
Sure.
Sorry. You may have mentioned this, and so when the parents give the permission for the survey, is that per survey, or do they do it at the beginning of the year that they can do
It's
any
actually
survey?
per survey. So what we do is I'll give you an example for this one. So February 10th, we sent a message on Parent Square to parents, and so they're going to receive that in email, text, or through the Parent Square app. Attached to that was a PDF that they could click and see a list of all the questions that their students would be answering. So it was 9 questions in the case of this climate and culture survey. They get to look at those questions, and then at the bottom of the Parent Square message, it said, do you consent to allow your child to take this survey, yes or no?
Okay.
If they say no, at the end of the deadline, which was a week in this point, so on February 18th, I looked at all of the no's and sorted them by school, and then we created custom lists in Parent Square, removing the students that were the no's, and then emailed the survey to the students, I think in February 20th, 21st, or something like that.
So a non-response is a yes?
Yes.
Okay.
There are some situations where we have to get a yes in order to administer the survey. It depends on the type of questions that are being asked, but in this case, those questions wouldn't have qualified for that.
Gotcha. Okay, awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so that's obviously a lot of the reasons why students come to school. The next part, if you go to the next slide, we're going to get into chronic absenteeism and what the definition of that is, and then we're going to start to look at some data from our district, the state of Arizona, and then specifically with some of our campuses. So the first, what you see on there is the definition. So chronic absence in Arizona, for school accountability purposes, chronic absence is when a student is absent from a given school for any reason, excused or unexcused. So again, any reason, more than 10% of the school's calendar year. So example would be 18 days for a typical 180-day school year that meets 5 days per week. So
I have a question.
Yes.
About that exact definition. So we have a lot of students that are absent because of many reasons. I know when they're seniors and they're going on college tours, that's an absence. Even though it's excused, it's an absence. When they're homesick, that's also an absence. Or when their family goes on vacation, that's an absence. Do we not track it separately for our purposes in Yuma Union between excused and unexcused?
We track it, but when it's reported, whether it's excused or unexcused, it falls into the chronic absentee definition.
Yeah.
And that's, excuse me, that's why I pointed out on there that it's for any reason.
Wow, I did not know that. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think it's important to realize that for the state of Arizona, it's any reason. If you're on a school field trip, you're not absent. But
Right.
if it's not school related, it could be a funeral, could be whatever. They don't care. It counts as an absence. So there's a lot of areas that would qualify you to be chronically absent eventually.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow,
So we need to keep that in mind.
thank you.
Just one little thing to point out, it's not up here, but when the pandemic hit, and that's what we're going to see when we start looking at the data, the national average for chronic absenteeism nearly doubled leading into 21-22 from 16% all the way up to 30%. Prior to the pandemic in Arizona, it really didn't fluctuate. It was anywhere between 12 and 14%. What you can see on this slide really just gives you a breakdown dating back to 2019-20, and if you were part of the Helios West Ed webinar, you saw some of this data. So 1920, Yuma Union had a absentee rate of, or chronic absence rate of 17% compared to the state of Arizona, which was 8%. And then anything thereafter, you can see where it has definitely spiked. Yuma Union's gone from 17%, then you can see 63, 59, 49, and then 46% in 2023-24, compared to the state of Arizona, obviously 8%, and then with the pandemic, 22%, 34, 29, and then we don't have the data for the state of Arizona from 23-24. So that just gives you kind of a, I guess, a bird's eye view of the numbers. So. Okay, without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Pavey and Mr. King. First, Mr. Pavey, I believe, he's going to talk about attendance rate data for 2 specific days in 2024 and 2025. Mr. Pavey?
Yeah, so as you can see, these are just 2 kind of snapshots of individual days, so we can see the difference between the previous slide, where when we look at overall throughout the year, obviously that number is significantly larger. But even though these numbers at a glance look better because, you know, we're close to 90% on both days, that's still a significant amount of kids that are gone. And so when you look at the impact that has just on each campus and what it looks like, it really requires a mobilization of our resources to really help these students out. And we look at the way we've challenged all our teachers across the district to really improve instruction and teaching and learning in their classrooms, to be more innovative, more engaging, to bring in project-based learning, to make it collaborative. So much effort has gone into that and goes into it every day. But when you have 10% of the kids missing out on that, it puts a strain on the teachers. And like the stats that Mr. Patton was reviewing, our students know that the teachers care, and it's very evident that they do. And so it takes a lot of their resources to then get these students caught up because they do care. And so whether it's having to adjust lesson plans, and often you've got 3 or 4 different plans going that day for the kids that might have missed previously, to the work that we have with our learning management system with Canvas and all the resources there to make it available to students if they can't be here. That's another set of lesson plans that need to be created. And so thankfully we're in a district where the teachers are so dedicated, they're willing to do that. But the bottom line is even though it's 10% gone, that's 10% of our students every day that are missing learning opportunities. And there's really no substitution for being there. So we're thankful that we do have the staff that we do on our campuses that work so hard to get these 10% of the students caught up. But you know, like Mr. Brienza mentioned with the dropout numbers, we'd love to see that number be much closer to 0 as far as number of students absent. But life happens. There's all kinds of reasons kids miss, and we have a lot of great systems in place to help our students get caught up. But when it gets down to it, there's no substitution for being able to be in class. And then if you go to the next slide, looking at what really is a bigger issue when we talk about just the number of students on a day being gone, it really is more of a tardy concern. When we look at first period, you can see those numbers are significantly higher each day. And I know we'll get into some of that later as far as the support systems we have in place, but just from the impact that has on a campus, again, you have a responsibility to make sure all your students are safe and accounted for, that you know where they're at, and that what's happening is again, it's in the classrooms, and they're getting the best of the teachers and of themselves. And so when we have 200 to 300 kids coming in tardy every day or just missing first period, it puts a strain just on our resources, and it impacts the educational experience for not only these students but the other students in class. So at this time I'm going to pass it off to Mr. Patton so he can talk a little bit about Parent Square and some of the things we're doing to help combat this.
Pavey. We talked about the Parent Square ability to survey students when I was up here a few minutes ago. One of the things that came with the platform when we subscribed to it was the ability for us to do absence notifications. With our previous system, Blackboard, they were essentially robocalls, and that was not all the time accurate, and it was also generally an annoyance for more parents, and I see some parents of former students nodding their heads right now. The Parent Square system is a lot more intuitive in a customizable way as well. It sends parents a notification based on the settings that we determine. So in the case of Vista, being a little bit of a smaller campus, we were able to pilot how that would look for potentially using it across the district. It sends parents a text message, a app notification if they are one of the 26% of our families that have downloaded the Parent Square app, or it'll send them a notification through email. Most of that is determined by the parent's customization within their profile on the platform. But if they have not been in there, the default setting is for them to get text messages instantly and emails as well. That is also dependent on the contact information that is in the Synergy system, because they sync every night, Synergy and Parent Square do. So working with Mr. King, we set up notifications to notify parents around 10:15 every morning, and whether or not their child was absent from first or second period. And I'm gonna let Mr. King elaborate on how that has looked and functioned on his campus and kind of what we've learned from it.
Actually, Danny, can we move back to the previous slide for a moment? So, as Mr. Pavey described, first period attendance and tardiness was a problem across the district. But as you can see, at Vista High School, it was a notable problem. 68% of our students have either a first period absence or a tardy. That's significant. I'm not a person that makes excuses. I make explanations, right? We don't offer transportation to Vista High School. The vast majority of our students take the YCAT or are in some way responsible for their own transportation. We found that punitive measures weren't really motivating kids to get there on time. Offering lunch detention wasn't motivating kids to get there. Suspending kids for not showing up on time wasn't really making sense, right? And so we started to address how could we attack this problem. Communicating better with YCAT about their schedule, when YCAT would be running late, how could we collaborate better with them to get kids on time. Communicating more with parents was the other solution to that problem. And so we worked with Mr. Patton on the next slide to use Parent Square to automate a lot of that communication with parents and guardians. You can see that previous slide was information from February 11th. We started the Parent Square communication on February 19th. It is a daily communication with parents at 10:15 every single day. We had the option to do it kind of like the robocalls used to be every day at 4 o'clock. That was kind of contingent then that every teacher had taken great attendance for the whole day. There's a possibility for error then, right? Here, I just have to make sure that my teachers take great attendance for first and second period. It's really easy. I have one entrance. When the kids show up, they come to the front counter with my receptionist. They are scanning their IDs. It's an automated system using an iPad. They get a pass. They go up to class. It's easy to monitor, easy to see who's late, who's tardy for first period. It's very, very accurate. And you can see that the numbers have improved significantly. On February 19th, we had 108 students that were either absent or tardy to their first period or second period. Each day we've seen improvement. Mondays are a little bit worse. They struggle to come off the weekends. But you can see that the last day that we had reported here on 3/10, we were down to 77 kids, which is still a lot of kids. That's over half of my students right now. But that's a significant improvement over 108 students. What's more significant, though, is the makeup of those 77 students is changing. There are more students who are tardy than absent. That's a small victory, right? They're showing up. They might have Starbucks, but they're showing up, and I love that. We've had really positive feedback from students and families. Students who are saying, I'm here because I know that my parents are going to get that call at 10:15, so I'm coming. And the secondary benefit is that it's really helping us to reconcile some of our synergy contact information. It provides a report to me, to my attendance clerk, and to my director of student support daily. That report shows how each of the parents was contacted, whether it was by the app, through text message, by email, or very few people who don't have easy contact in one of those means, or if they listed a landline, they'll get a phone call. Typically that's 1 or 2 people a day. And then my attendance clerk or registrar will go and try and reconcile that list, make contacts to correct information, and make sure that we have up-to-date information and synergy for those students. And for the most part, we've been able to make some really great improvements, which is important to make sure that we're able to contact parents and guardians, and especially for emergencies. And parents I've had 0 negative parent feedback for the system, so it's been really good.
I have a question, if I may, and it's more for the larger campuses. How do the larger campuses operate within these parameters? Do we still have tardy sweep where the kid still winds up going in like a detention type place when they're late? How do we check them in?
Yeah, so I think that's a wonderful segue, because I know our DOSs are going to be speaking exactly to that. So I don't want to steal their thunder, but I know they're going to do a great job of answering that specific question. So yeah, so I'll turn it over to Amber and Lauren.
So to answer that question, no, we do not have tardy sweep in the way that you probably remember tardy sweep. We are not putting students in a room and keeping them there all period. Our late check-in process varies by period, however. First period, because it is such a large number of students, it's outside. They get dropped off, they come right to the late check-in line. We're outside saying, hey, do you have a pass? Do you have a pass? Make sure you go get your late pass. It's probably the words that I say the most in the day is go get your late pass, get a late pass. So they check in there. Other periods, there's fewer tardies, so they're checking in at the attendance office. And it's been a really great system there because they are using the iPads to scan, and it gives our attendance clerks the ability to be like, why don't you have your ID? Or if you don't have your ID, get your Chromebook out. Well, you don't have your Chromebook, you're coming to school. Where's your Chromebook? So they get to have some conversations there as well with those students on how prepared they are coming to school. One of the other things that we've started doing in October to support students and the parents with these tardies is we started sending parent square messages, at least for first period. Sometimes it goes all day, sometimes it's just first period, but parents are getting a notification saying, your student was late to school or to first period this day. As a reminder, school starts at 7:40 a.m. We appreciate your support in helping get your student here on time. And the first day that we sent it, we had a lot of phone calls in our attendance office. What do you mean my kid's late? I did not know my kid was late. And so it lit a little bit of a fire there because now students know, oh, my parents are going to find out if I'm late to school. So that's been pretty effective in terms of at least communicating with parents that their student is late. One of the other things that we're doing supporting the students is we're running a tardy report weekly on students who have been tardy, how many times they've been tardy, what classes, and then we have the ability to check their grades versus their attendance. And one of the points that we've come to find is that the students with more tardies have lower grades. And so I'm going to let Amber talk a little bit about that.
So once we get that report, we kind of look at our numbers, looking at how many were late 5 days, how many were late 4 days, and, all the way down. Once we kind of get that list, we're able to look at, like she said, those grades. If a kid is passing all of their classes, they may not be such a high priority at that time. But if we look at some of those kids who are failing multiples, I'm definitely going to pull that kid and have a conversation. That first conversation literally is discussion of grades. How many days they were late, what was going on, what's changed, what's causing them to be late. The stories that those kids have is either an absolute lie because they just can't get out of bed, or it's absolutely heartbreaking for some of them. Those ones that are heartbreaking, that you verify, those are the kids that we show a little bit more compassion, and it's maybe, okay, I just want you to try and get here a little earlier. Can we work on 5 minutes? Can we work on, you were late 5 days this week, can we work on going to 4? Making those little steps to try and encourage those kids to get here. So the first one's a warning, it's just a conversation. But we do contact parents, whether it's through Parent Square or through a phone conversation. After that, the second conversation continues to happen. Our school, Cebola's, we do 1 hour detentions, again, 2 hour detention, still having those same conversations as to what's changing, what's not changing, what other help do you need. A fourth conversation then becomes in-school suspension or a parent conference. So we ask the parent to come in, we pull all the data, we talk about what's going on. There is then a plan put in place. That's where we're at with the supportive measures that we have, along with the Parent Square messages that are sent out daily for lates. Something that COFA also started in January when we came back is we send out a message not only for lates, but if your student was absent 1 or more times in the day. That's where we saw a major spark in the phone calls to attendance. My kid was late, was absent? What do you mean? I dropped him off. Well, they were marked absent for 4th period. I will have a conversation. That has now changed. The kids are like, I wasn't absent, I wasn't absent. Go talk to your teacher because your teacher marked you absent. That's put some of that pressure back on the teachers as to making sure that they do the attendance correctly. And the kids, like it was said, are now aware that we're having those conversations with their parents.
One of the other systems that we have in place when it comes to the supportive measures is, Amber alluded to some of those heartbreaking stories that we hear from students. We have students who, you know, they are taking care of their siblings in the morning because their parents left at 4 a.m. to go to work. And little brother, little sister goes to school in a totally different area of town. We've got stories of loss, we have stories of hardships, all sorts of things that we hear from these kids. So our job is also to help provide that wraparound support for those students where if we have an issue where they need some help, we've got social workers on our campuses. We can send a quick message to the social workers. We work in what we call the student support team, and that consists of our social workers, the DOS, the Director of Student Supports, and our dropout prevention specialists. We work as a team because we found that we're having the same conversations with the same kids. They're needing support with the mental aspect, they're going to the social worker. Well, it turns out we've talked to them for an issue in a classroom, and it turns out that our dropout have talked to them for an absentee issue. So we've got a support system built in where we can refer out to the appropriate area.
All the campuses might be a little different as to what they're doing, but for a majority, it does follow that same process. The conversations, the detentions or consequences for not being where they need to be.
So it's procedure, not policy or our practices. But the one thing nice about Vista, for example, being a smaller school, they can see what has immediate effect potentially. And then the larger comprehensive campuses might be like, ooh, we like that idea. Kind of like, you know, Parent Square for one student absent. I'm sure some principals in here are thinking about, ooh, how can we leverage Parent Square for when a student's gone first period? Because maybe that campus isn't doing that already. So,
yeah, when I was saying that punitive measures weren't working, I'm not saying that we avoid enforcing our attendance policies. We're still doing that. I'm just saying that we need to look at it from other ways as well. Some of our kids are experiencing those punitive measures, and it wasn't positively affecting the attendance policy as much as we'd like. Yeah.
Turn green. All right. So as far as the the dropout prevention specialist. You know, our first kind of big job is obviously to identify which students we need to provide intervention for. So we mainly do that through Synergy for the running of reports. We have a pretty standard, just right off the bat, we do what's called a 3-5-7 kind of report. And so 3 consecutive absences, 5 consecutive absences. So typically what happens on a campus is at 3 consecutive absences, we're making contact home and kind of seeing what the situation is. At 5 consecutive absences, that's usually when the dropout prevention specialist gets involved. So we're using all the emergency contacts. If the student happen to be at school at that time, we bring them in, but we're trying to get down to the real core issue of why the student is missing. If it's been 7 days, that obviously we have the 10-day drop rule. So 7 days, we're making our last contact method, and then we're usually going out to do a home visit, just to really try to find that student. And that's kind of all in an attempt to, one, re-engage that student back into school, and to avoid that 10-day drop. We use a lot of different reports, and so that's really the kind of the tedious part is, you know, we may be looking at reports all day, and we have to filter those reports. We got to go through them and look at, and then we got to look at individual, you know, students. I always looked at it. I was at COFA for a number of years, and on a bigger campus, I broke it down into the preventative piece. So 9th, 10th graders, most of those who are still impacted by the mandatory attendance by the truancy law, and then your upperclassmen, where, you know, if they're missing a lot, always poor attendance is usually accompanied by poor academics, and so we're trying to intervene and say, hey, what's happening, and is, you know, in the end, is this the most appropriate place for you? You know, can you achieve graduation here, or do we need to look at alternative stuff? And so, you know, for us, I think all of us would say, you know, we have a kind of a more deeper relationship with the students, because we're trying to find really, a lot of the students don't want to tell you what's going on, and you have to build that rapport. And so it's, you have to build the rapport in order to be able to check in with that student many times, you know, and them willing to want to come back to you and share information about their personal life, what's going on, what problems they're having, because if you don't know what the problem is, you can't help them, you know. And so we also have to be really versed in what resources are available to the students, and it could be stuff that's outside of school, you know. And so we do a lot of, you know, networking with the alternative schools and other schools in the community, also with other organizations that provide resources, mental health and homelessness and things like that. And so, you know, really it's a constant contact. So either student contact, parent contact. I know we all use Parent Square. We do use you know, we tried to make the referral to juvenile court our last, you know, intervention, because what I tell students is, you know, I want to give you the opportunity to make that choice. We start introducing it to you in the juvenile court, and they're probably going to start making choices for you. And so, but I think other than that, anything else?
I think the process of looking at attendance, a lot of students miss first, second period, so they don't have consecutive absences. So we work with our attendance department, and it takes a team of people to contact parents in person. So we do utilize Parent Square on Fridays, because from Monday through Thursday, we try to call each parent to let them know the student was absent the previous week for 3 or more absences during the day. So it could be just first, and sometimes it's the same phone call to the same parent every single week. We don't stop. Yes, they probably hate us because we call them again and again. And of course, there are those parents that if we can't find them, then we do home visits. We try to get a hold of parent. Students, of course, we reach out to students. We have We work closely with counselors, with our social worker, with our DAWs, and we try to engage with the student. And I think we try to get everybody involved in the same thing. We do referrals to admin when we get to a point when excessive absences is just overwhelming. A lot of our students, and we see a high number of students missing first period. It's mostly seniors. A lot of them are our seniors. The mentality is thinking, I'm done, I'm already out, you can't do anything to me. I mean, we get many different answers. Of course, we get the stories of sad story from each student. It's true, it's reality, but a majority of them, it just, went to Starbucks and then I went to school. So, and I always, when they ever come in late, I look at the tag in their Starbucks cup and it gives you the hour when they purchase the coffee. And it's usually like 7:54, 7:45. So we know that they're up early because they're already dressed and nicely and they went to Starbucks before they went to school. So, I mean, we like I said, we try to make sure that we reach out to parents and students. Every single absence counts for us. If it's not a full day absences, we try to make sure that we look at first, second, third, fourth. So we try to make sure our parents understand the attendance process, that it's not a full day absences. It's also like first period absences that also counts and affects every single student. So I think that's one of the biggest things that we've been working with San Luis. Our attendance department has 3 amazing ladies that work Monday through Friday to try to reach parents whenever they can't get a hold of anybody. And when we get excessive absences, I'm also there. So there's 4 of us. And then our director of student support, we refer to students to our social worker, and of course our counselors are amazing working with the students. So we have a whole team of people dedicated to working on the students' attendance. And of course, there's students that we just can't change and get them to turn that mentality of attendance, a culture of understanding the importance of education, but we have not given up yet, so we're working on it.
Does anybody other than me have a question? Yeah, please. As long as you use your mic. Go for it.
I have a couple questions just to everybody. So can't seniors not have a first period and come in second? Why don't they do that?
A lot of them actually have a credit recovery class in their first period. So they're trying to recover maybe an F from previous class, but they just don't see the importance of being in that class. So a lot of them don't have first period, a lot of them have second period, and they're still late or absent to their second periods as well.
Oh, goodness. My second question is, so is the attendance department the only ones that are required to do the phone calls? I've heard that teachers are also required, and that's been a feedback that I've received from quite a few teachers that's a huge burden on their already packed schedule to have to make these phone calls.
There's a few teachers that do make the contacts. We see them in Synergy. There's a lot of that don't. We try to encourage teachers to call, especially if they notice that they're missing 3 days consecutively to their class. But then we step in usually when it's a consecutive absence. That's when we step in as well. And the attendance department is the one that make the phone calls in our schools. I'm not exactly sure of the other campuses.
Okay.
Yeah, to speak to that, teachers are, I mean, they're obviously an extremely valuable part of this process. And when we look at the reports that might be run by the attendance officer, by our dropout prevention specialist, a kid that is missing maybe just that one class multiple times might not show up on the reports. But as a teacher, just like we encourage them, reach out to parents. If you notice anything that the student might be struggling with, or you want to give a shout out on something great, we ask them, just call and say, hey, I'm missing little Timmy. Is everything okay? You want to make sure he knows where he can find this assignment on Canvas, or when is he going to be back, so I can have some stuff ready for him. So I don't know that any campus, I can't speak to the other campuses, but I don't think we're asking teachers to make the calls on the high volume like the other support staff is here. But if you notice a kid missed your class 3 straight days, we do encourage our teachers, reach out to home and see what's going on, see what supports they're going to need. And then the other part of that is to loop in our directors of student supports and our dropout prevention specialists.
One of the other ways that I know at Cibola, we've trained our teachers to use Parent Square. So we're not asking them to take 30 minutes after their school day to call parents. We're just asking them, they can use Synergy messages, they can use Parent Square, they can use a phone call. Some of them have Remind. We've shifted more away from that with Parent Square though. And those are quick, efficient ways for them to get that message so that we're not adding time and more time to their plates.
Yeah, I think that's great.
And with that system, I mean, you can dump 100 student ID numbers in and send one message to all of those people at the
Is
same
there a
time.
way on Parent Square when you send a message to see if it's been read or to see
Yes.
if it's, so you can view that?
Yep.
That's very great.
Yeah. And so when people say, I didn't get that message, I can see not only did you get it, it was received, it was opened.
Right.
I can see what type of message you received, whether it was a text or an email or a phone call that you received. Yeah, it's very, very effective.
Oh, that must be an awkward conversation.
Well, I just want to add that with Parent Square, this is the first full year of implementation. So as we learn the system better, it will save time on every practitioner's end, whether it's the teacher or front office administration. So Parent Square has been a big boost to our communications with the parents and also a time saver for our staff as well.
I can imagine.
My last question is, and most of my questions are based on teacher burden, just because I love the teachers in this district and I talk to quite a few of them. What are the requirements for teachers when a student is absent and they're moving along with their day or teaching the kids that are there? Is it a huge burden to have to come up with things to keep them on track if they've missed? Like, what is the support there for the teacher, or is it all on the teacher to provide that?
So there's a lot of layers to the question. As far as all on the every teacher owns their classroom. They do a great job of it. As far as the expectation is always we're going to give the kids the best experience possible when they're there. And as we've seen, they're not always there 100% of the time. But some of the supports that are in place, most of our teachers are in a PLC. They collaborate with the other world history teachers, for example. And I know on our campus, we've worked to create, whether they're mastery assessments, where it's things that are available where if a kid missed this unit or they missed this assessment, it's something that every teacher using that's teaching that subject can pull. We try to equip them with a lot of things in their toolbox, so they're not having to take 10 minutes out of every period and meet with the students that were gone. But it's also hard for a teacher not to want to take that step, because they're there. That's why they're there, is to help the students. So we've tried to give them tools for them to utilize, support systems, but there's no way around it. It's hard enough to have a class full of students that are there every day, because they're at different levels, different styles, and trying to cater to every one of them. And so then when you add on the missed opportunities, it is more difficult, but we try to just encourage them to work as a team and come up with common, whether it's makeup assessments or a lot of them utilize similar practice activities that are there ready to roll. And Canvas has been a big support for that as well, where it can be housed, and students often, if they're in a position where they can be proactive and say, I'm going to be out the next couple days, we have a basketball game, we're traveling, they can say, well, that's what we're doing tomorrow. It's going to be there. You can utilize it while you're on the bus, or not every situation lends itself to that, but it allows the students to do some work at home with the Chromebooks. So we try to spread it out as best as possible, but it's hard.
Thank you.
At a later time, I would like to sit with someone just so that when I'm approached by teachers, I have a good response, so I can direct them as to their complaint. You know what I mean?
Yeah, at a later date I can get with you, but thank you though.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else?
Just going back to when you look at our district and Arizona, And then, you know, and you see that increase in Arizona from, you know, from 19 to 23 at 29%. And us, I mean, it went up and then it's coming down. Do you think that any of that's a correlation between just the demographics and the dynamics of our district and, you know, that I can see all of you are frontlines doing everything, but there's just some things that you have to work with that are out of your, you know, capability, the dynamics of what families are facing, whether it's unemployment or jobs or students needing to have jobs, they're working nights, they're tired in the morning. Is some of that, are you seeing that's just kind of unique to some of the circumstances that we face as a county?
Which one of you wants to grab that question?
I would say, yeah. You know, I think, you know, post-COVID, there was, you know, I think, there was a lot of learning loss. And, you know, but we do, I know the dropout prevention specialists and probably the DOS too, we really see kind of what that stuff, my parents don't work, we don't have a car, I got to stay home and watch my siblings, you know, and so those are, you know, it's, can we affect change in that stuff? We can help out as best we know how to do, you know, on a human level, we're going to do that. But there are situations where, you know, life has hit them, and you can only do the best for them. That's why I think it's important for us to be so knowledgeable about, you know, about what we can do for them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I just want to say that, I know we're getting close on time. I just want to say that Yuma County is very unique. And we face challenges that they don't have in the Phoenix, Maricopa area or Tucson. So we definitely have challenges, but at the same time, if you look at chronic absenteeism, it's every absence. So as Madam President mentioned earlier, you know, is it everything? College visits? Yes. It doesn't matter why you're gone. It's classified as an absence, and eventually that's lumped into chronic absenteeism. And we have amazing individuals here today, but they're just a representation of the 1,112 employees we have that work with students every single day. Because we have students that come for meals, and they're going to see the cafeteria student nutrition worker first thing in the morning, and that is the smile they get, and that's the gratitude of why they came. So really proud of the individuals we have in our district. So when we have people that struggle with making the phone calls home, I get that. You know, I get the workload. But our teachers, our staff, we're doing it because that's what makes every kid college, career, community prepared. So
I just want to end this session, first of all, by saying thank you to everybody for putting it together for us, for coming and speaking with us and sharing. For those of you who have chosen to listen, it's so helpful for the five of us, I mean, all of us up here. But I also wanted to congratulate our district in general for utilizing technology to help us and make our lives better. And it's not like a Terminator scenario. It's not like AI is going to attack us, but it has not replaced the friendly face and the connections that we make interpersonally. And so I'm very grateful personally for each and every one of you for doing what you do to keep our kids entertained and educated and here and fed. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn this study session, please? So moved. Is there a motion to adjourn? Let's say I move to adjourn. Yes. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion made by Christy, seconded by Shelley. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll adjourn until 5:15. Thank you.